Let's dive into it today. We're going to be talking about the government shutdown, the crash of crypto, and of course, a lot more. You don't want to miss it. We'll also do some charting. It's going to be a good one. Let's just get started. I want to jump over to a clip first. And this clip came from this innovation summit with the Fed around payments. I don't want to respond to it yet. I'm going to play it for you guys because it just pissed me off. Listen to this.
You should be able to pay some kind of reward or yield on the actual T-bills and money market funds that you're holding. You should be able to pass some of that on to customers.
It's not an investment vehicle. It's not a time deposit where you're holding it to earn interest, right? You're not holding currency for its yield. If Congress wanted to let you pay interest, they should have just said, let you pay interest. So trying to backdoor it is a little funny. It's not supposed to bear interest. And, at that point, it's not up to me to decide whether that's up to Congress. That's why I don't want to think about paying interest on these payment accounts. It's not supposed to be an account for somebody to hold stablecoins and earn interest. You're not holding it to earn interest. So it's a claim on the banks. You can disintermediate a bank, but you can't disintermediate the banking system. You don't have any claim to demand treasuries. You don't get to go to the bank and say, I want some treasuries. They'll say, no, you get $1. Here's what you get. Those are my thoughts.
All right, so understanding that is Fed Governor Waller. And this is all around these skinny master accounts that they're talking about, which would kind of circumvent the traditional Fed master account that you have to have when you're a bank, right? And what they're talking about is allowing stablecoins into this. This is where it gets a little muddy because we're not sure what that means. One, Congress would have to initiate that in the Genius Act. The Genius Act is now already in a position where the banks are trying to get this almost redrafted, all to protect bank deposits because of the concern that we may see this massive bank exodus going into stablecoin. Now, granted, this could still fly possibly into the DeFi side of things. There could also be some interesting investment instruments that could be activated. But this will muddy the waters dramatically for crypto if, in fact, a stablecoin yield cannot be done legally. So this is going to get pretty heated. Of course, Brian Armstrong and many others are in D.C. today trying to clarify not only this, but much more in the Clarity Act, which, of course, is possibly on the cusp of getting approved. So there's a lot happening right now that is still very tied to where crypto is going. We are going to get into looking at some charts today and how this applies, because we saw Bitcoin, of course, run up this week, and it has now regressed. So I wanted to bring in Paul coming in from DataDash to kind of break this down. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing well, Paul. How are you?
Nice to see you back. If you guys have not visited his YouTube channel, go over there right there, DataDash, right there on YouTube. You guys are over 500,000 subs over there, so good to see you guys out there putting out some great content. Let's get into the first point I want to hit on. And one of the things is, of course, always is when Cramer does something like this, it immediately sends the crypto market into a frenzy. But that's not really it, guys. The real factor here that's pushing this market is things that are happening with this government shutdown. You've got SNAP recipients now. All this potentially gets cut off very short period of time. You've got all these job losses now being filed and unemployment being filed by federal workers. This spiked 121%. I thought that would have been much more than that. But this was 7,200, even though there's like almost 1 million that are now furloughed. So this is a pretty significant one, highest since 2019. And when you look at just in general, the amount of claims that rose 9% from the prior week. So it's starting to cascade, which could get very, very bad, I think, in general for the economy, but also for crypto in general. So this has a lot of bearing on Bitcoin. Now, you had a tweet that you put out. This would be wild to get this moved. Explain what you're looking at, what I'm looking at right here in terms of your charts and why you think we might see something come on Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was actually a little something I was having some fun with yesterday, especially because we were getting a nice little pop. But after we had that top put in on the at 126,000, 6th of October, right? We've got the big wick down and just kind of had this move over. And a lot of times what happens with that is, you get this cooling off and time kind of passes by and another like harmonic setup, which is a sequence of Fibonacci. So all I'm looking at is for things such as that wick down and then, whoops, sorry. So all I'm looking for things such as when you get this wick down and then you're looking for the the pushback up into some Fibonacci areas. And there's sequences of those that have specific patterns. So in this case, I was looking for what's called the Gartley, and it is this setup here. So when we came down and made the 886 pullback last week, I think it was like the 17th Friday, holding that just kind of set this up where I was looking for a run back up towards that 786 retracement. So basically just looking for this to push up into the 120 mark. I utilize fib time a lot. So a lot of times it usually takes just about the same amount of time to get from this point to this point, from that point to the end. So that's why I had the dates up there between, I think it was Sunday to Tuesday of this week, basically. So yesterday when we were getting that push up on Tuesday, I was just looking, I was like, man, it would be interesting to get that push up. This would be a bearish setup, of course. And then overall, I actually still imagine we're rolling towards this $97,000 mark in the near-ish term before we continue, if we're going to continue up from here. But that's what I was looking for. And it's still something that I'm looking to see if Bitcoin does push back up towards that 120 mark in the next coming weeks here. I think that we're just really just range bound at this point for the short term here.
All right, so you look at where the market is right now. We put this poll out in reference to kind of bullishness on Bitcoin. Are people more bullish to 120 or the 100, much to your point right there? I know this looks neck and neck, but remember, Bitcoin trading at 108 right now as we're recording. So technically this would be a little bit more bullish to go the 120 route
right.
in terms of how this plays out. Do you think people right now are maybe overestimating this market, at least in the short term, of the bullish nature of it, with so many macro environments pushing this thing down?
Yeah, we discussed last time when I was on, I think it was like the day we were topping pretty much. It was like the 6th or 7th of October. And for me, I was looking for like 130, not much more than we already were going to. And I also was targeting that, target and that time frame from months ahead. So essentially we've topped there. And one of the things we discussed was the idea that if we see a substantial pullback from here, that everybody would be really, really married to the idea that the 4-year cycle hit, the top is in, and even just getting a slight pullback to 100K, so 90, breaking 100 would really like put the gas on that. And then, like you said, now we're surrounded by all these, news events and catalysts that seem like it's, pushing it down as well. To me, honestly, I think we put in a top at 126. And from there, I was always anticipating a range to come out of it for a couple more months, just like we've seen basically the entirety of this bull market so far, as we all are really aware, going back even to 2022, after we pretty much started this run up. You got the initial run, and then we just ranged around, giving everybody plenty of time to just argue back and forth, bull market, bear market, bull market, bear market, boring everybody out of it just to continue up. You get another range to the side here at 74K for 6 months, which really just kind of went sideways and down, but not crazy. This is only like a 30% pullback. Again, bear market, max fear, carry trade fear at the lows here, only to break back up again. You get another sideways one. This one's a little quicker. So I just mentioned this in a video today that at least this one got over quicker than expected. But same thing, just a 20 and 30% pullback. Big fears at the low, right? The tariff war, basically broke out in this window. And then now again, we're getting the tariff, headlines to just kind of, push down the price here. But ultimately, I was also looking for this, again, a really big sequence of Fibonacci's that took place from the carry trade low with the time frame of putting in a high around that week of the 29th, which aligns with the 4-year cycle. We pushed 3% away from it. And ultimately, the first target of this whole setup was back down to the 382, which we've essentially are sitting at right now. So with this the way it is, again, it's more so probably more probable to me that we range around in this region, make our way down to the secondary target zone, which is about 94 to 97. But to me, I really think that this has a really big opportunity area for this to be the next major support. And then we actually take it back up to new all-time highs in 2026. But right now, yes, to agree, that everything around us feels like it's pushing it down. But yeah.
All right, so interesting that you kind of compared it to that range-bound section around 75K, because that was one of the areas where I think a lot of people thought Bitcoin was done. And then, of course, we saw the run-up from there. Here's my question with the timing, and this was an interesting post by Virtual Bacon over there. You guys should check him out. He does a good job on YouTube as well. But markets don't stop on fear, they bottom. And I agree with this. And my point is this, though, Paul, is when you look at where we are right now, the 4-year cycle, play that into it, and then you look at the potential around the macro elements that are also playing into it, because it's likely we're going to get another 75 basis points this year. They could roll this into even more aggressive next year. Government shutdown is not going to be forever. It's going to come back. And hopefully this crypto regulation gets cleared. All those are still very bullish signs. And there's several macro analysts that are pointing toward an elongated cycle. Would you agree that if we are pushing, and let's say we hit that 100K mark, that 97 that you're kind of pointing to, would you be worried that a lot of people in the crypto market would say that was the top at 126, we're now in a bear market?
Definitely. I feel like we see that as it is every day right now. Anytime you get just the push up to 114 yesterday, the euphoria was kicking back in for a hot minute, and you dropped it right back the next day, and then you scan through and everybody's like, oh, see you at 60,000, see you at 30,000, all these things, right? And people are giving exact dates. They're thinking that, they can pinpoint the exact low for Bitcoin next year at November time. And I definitely foresee that would be the case. And just to double up on your fear and greed piece, I don't know if you guys can see this chart, okay, I don't have it showing here, but I was just going to showcase how even right now, Bitcoin trading at $108,000 or $9,000, the crypto market is in extreme fear right now. And to Virtual Bacon's point, generally speaking, we don't see the market top there. Yes, we were in a little bit more of a neutral area when we did top at 126. But yeah, I think that we're in a very similar situation to what we saw each and every basic sideways piece that we've seen on Bitcoin the whole way up from 30,000 back in 2023 or 4 to the $70,000 last year. And then even to this year when we topped off at 108,000 on inauguration day. So I think that it's definitely setting up for a big surprise, if anything.
All right. Well, one thing to consider is there's one guy that's very bullish still, and that is Tom Lee. He's calling for an S&P 500 at 7,000, so very, very aggressive to get to a 7,000 by year end. That would change things around. And again, this is something I've said before. If Tom Lee is right on these calls, this guy's going to go down as the most amazing investor call we've seen, because he's been going against the current, for quite some time on not only Bitcoin but also of where we're standing on Ethereum. I want to go to a clip real quick, because this is Mike Novogratz kind of going the opposite position. Take a look.
The big deleveraging that happened a week ago, that's not good for markets, right? It wiped out a lot of market makers, means less liquidity. And you can see yesterday we were down and then up 4% and then right back down. And so there's a little less liquidity in the market. It took a lot of retail leverage out of the system. And so the good news is we're less leveraged. The bad news is when Humpty Dumpty breaks, he doesn't get put together right away.
How do you think about it? We've had, obviously, all sorts of folks from Tom Lee and others who've come on and said by the end of the year we could be at $250,000 for this coin. Obviously, others like Kathy Wood have even, more aggressive and optimistic views longer term out. But where are you right this moment?
Yeah, listen, the end of the year is only 2.5 months away. And so there would have to be a heck of a lot of, crazy stuff to really get that kind of momentum. I do think, we should hold 100, 100 or somewhere close to that should be the downside. And on the upside, you don't really accelerate until you take out 125. And so the most likely outlook is we're rangy between, 100 and 120 and 125, unless we take out the top side. We could take out the top side if, the president prematurely makes a move on the Fed, which, they could target that easily by the end of the year. And if this bill gets passed, those are the two kind of catalysts I see.
All right, so you can kind of see it. He's still a little bit more on the bearish side, kind of counter to what Tom Lee is saying. Then you have to flip over to the gold market. We saw the gold market also adjust. Yesterday, gold prices fell almost 6%. This was the largest one-day drop since April of 2013. We called this out in our video yesterday. This is a Sigma move right now. In other words, a large move only happens in 1 out of 240,000 days in a normal world. That's an interesting situation. So my question is, are we rotating? Are there assets that are trying to rotate, even though at the time, maybe it was a short rotation into Bitcoin and then literally taking liquidity right back out of the market? How would you play gold and Bitcoin right now as a hedge?
Yeah, so let's take a look at gold. Last time I was on, I believe it was just breaking through that, like right around the $4,000 mark. But we discussed this one a couple times. I think that gold and Bitcoin are very, very much alike in the sense of the only thing you can even compare Bitcoin to in this time is gold, with the price action and the things we've seen in history, especially as we come into some major turning points or events in our financial history that goes that way. Usually when we see gold pumping, generally is not a great sign in the next coming 12 to 24 months, because that's generally when people are running away from fiat currencies or kind of hedging their bets a little bit ahead of big downturns. But anyways, gold had a huge break of the previous high here. We ran it up, consolidated, and it was pretty much just these two areas I was looking to, 3,600 to see if we could hit the breaks at all. It was just straight through it and then ran up basically to the next major area here. So now we're getting a cool off. And it was said that in that time frame, you had the rotation into Bitcoin, because as in the time we pulled back on gold, like this almost 10%, which is actually pretty massive in that case, is when Bitcoin pushed up to the 114. So yeah, I mean, is that something, and it was equal 8 to 10%, which is interesting. Is that an even split on, was everybody taking profits out of gold, dumping in Bitcoin? Like you said, it was just momentarily almost, because Bitcoin's already given up those gains. Personally, I think that this is just a natural move out of gold. We've, come up into a region of a next major, even though we're in price discovery, you could still anticipate areas where you're going to hit get a little cool down. And what you want to see is this right here, where you're actually pulling back, because now you can actually present new information here on the next legs up. And generally speaking, when you have a huge move up like this, very strong, you can see we've had no pullbacks basically along the way. You do pull back to that 382, and that's usually where I look to seek continuation, which is usually a shallower retracement. Usually people will look for the gold pocket or anything like that, the 618. But this 382, what we're coming into right now, is just below 4,000. So it's nice, right under that, psychological level where, again, people are already starting to kind of get worried that gold may have topped and everything of that nature. But realistically, to me, as long as we're holding above this region and even down to this area, I think that we still have legs and room to run this back up. The only thing we may see here is just similar to Bitcoin. You may get a little bit of a range here. So to Mike, I think that's what Mike Novogratz's point.
Right.
We've come off of some really huge moves here. And then I think that's just the time where we're just going to cool off a bit before the next legs up. But I do anticipate both gold, gold may not see extreme moves up from here, like $10,000 and $20,000, but I think that we still have legs to the upside. And then Bitcoin, I think, is going to make that next move up in 26 as well.
So if you were calling 2026, and let's assume that we don't see massive moves toward the end of the year, I'll go the Mike Novogratz side, even though I think Tom Lee is intriguing in the sense that he's still calling for these crazy highs. If you look into 2026, Bitcoin and gold, do you have any potential projections for those for next year?
Yeah, for gold, again, it's all determined on how we react right in this region. And I guess I would start to say that things start to not look so great as if we come back and get below 3,600. And at that point, I would say that you probably switch it into a little bit of a downtrend here. But as long as we're above that, I could see us pushing up to, at least we're going to hit that 4,400 mark. I mean, that's a no-brainer at this point. But the way I would look at this too is I would just take a simple extension right here from that last impulse move and take it to our high. Let's assume we get a bounce off of this 382 around $4,000. And then the next two that I could see, again, we'll probably kind of spend some time here too. I do think maybe the rest of this year, which again, 2 months from now, not a lot of time, we probably do cool off a bit. And then the next leg up, I only say into next year, just because we're at a place where, 2 months is not a lot of time to just kind of get 8 weeks to see a cool off after a move like this. And then into, the next coming months here, push up to 46 and then ultimately 5,000, I think is a really big number for gold in the future there.
Okay.
And then for Bitcoin.
Hit Bitcoin real quick. As far as 2026 is concerned.
So for Bitcoin, the next move I'm looking at out of Bitcoin is assuming that we come down to this 197, same deal essentially, is just really taking some looks at some just the next jaunt up. So taking this huge impulse move, projecting it off of where we may bottom out at the 160 mark to 200 is my projection for Bitcoin in 2026. I'll just,
Okay.
Again, I don't necessarily think we're going to get there this year in the next 2 months. I think we're going to cool off a bit. And then in that same time, though, I think that we have potential for the altcoins. If we're going to have a rotation, I think it might head into Ethereum and some of the altcoins. So I'm sure we're going to dive into some of those here.
Yeah, speaking of those, let's talk about Solana real quick. They've got their Hong Kong approval. So this is the first spot ETF that is live. So we've got that going on. You also look at, in general, their ETF now is paying a 6 to 7% yield to holders. So this changes, I think, dramatically into how people are looking at Solana in general. If you look at the Solana chart right now, where would this be a buy for Sol if we do go down? And what do you think we're going to see on Solana by year end?
By year end, let's take a peek. So one setup that I've been monitoring for the better part of this year, so from August of last year, actually, and then into April when we had the tariff bottom, I brought this up a few times already, was this setup where 196 was a crucial level to hold above. And we were discussing how the spot ETF and some of the volume that was coming into Solana really added to the idea here that we would see that next jaunt up. Because as long as we were holding above 196, I imagine that we would push up probability wise to 274 and 323. Only issue here, technically speaking, is that we've now lost that 196. Not a death sentence by any means. Probably could come back down towards some lower areas. If you're looking for that, like you just mentioned, a buy zone, I would say probably back to like 150 on Solana. It's still something to just kind of be aware of, is that we're up 50% even at that point from earlier this year. So it's just something that depends on however your entry and your investing strategy goes. But I still ultimately imagine we're going to see a push towards this 274 and 323 on Solana in the I'll go ahead and even just say probably by end of the year. We'll give it that, the fun 2-month marker from here and see how it ends up.
All right, there you go. Well, listen, that would be a pretty significant move for Sol, trading at 182 right now. And in general, our sentiment metrics are not very positive on Solana right now with money flow coming out. So that's a big deal. Let's get into further into this, because I want to jump over to Ethereum real quick. A lot of good news for Ethereum, if you think about it. ETH now, adoption compounding. You got Shopify now supporting ETH. Stripe rolled out stablecoins. Robinhood's announcing their Arbitrum move with their L2. You've got Van Eck going in with an ETH ETF for staked. And you got Walmart saying, hey, that's all right. We're going to take some Ethereum on this thing in terms of payments. So very bullish for Ethereum. Why aren't we seeing the chart move here? Paul, what's going on?
Yeah, that's always the question, right? Yeah, so I always point this out, even with Solana right now, right? We just got that big ETF news, which, it's not to say that it wouldn't be a bigger ETF if we got it here in the States, but big news there. And it seems like nothing kind of came out of the price action short term.
Right.
If you think back to even when we got Ethereum's first news of ETFs and everything back in 24, I think it was like May time. That was literally, it was slow. And we actually crashed 50% from the high, from the day that the ETF got listed, at some point beforehand. So, it's not always an immediate, piece that ties in with the technicals there. And actually, I usually go against the herd a little bit when we hit the big news events, at least the short term, because a lot of times that occurs. But for ETH, I just wanted to kind of highlight again, one of the biggest reasons that I'm a huge ETH bull. I wish that it was a little bit more to tie this into all the altcoins, but unfortunately, they don't seem like they're having the same result. But we had this humongous, this is back from 2019 to 2025, a huge reversal setup that I've been tracking or had been tracking, especially since 2023. I had targeted the completion to come in here, so blah, blah, blah. Big zone for this to come into. Again, this is major time frame. So we're talking ups and downs along the way. Even since we pushed off that low, there's been several times where we've seen corrections and everything along the way. But in this case, we're showcasing ETH outperforming Bitcoin. In the short term here, the two major areas I'm looking for, which the big one being up in this region at 0.06, I'm targeting for that to continue from where we are to get to throughout the year of 2026. So another reason that 2026 to me has has some bullishness behind it for the crypto market. I don't imagine that ETH would be the only thing pushing up if we were. So currently, we're bouncing off of some support. I think that we have we're cooling off a little bit from that last liquidation piece and have the room to move back up into this region here. So with all the good news around it, I do think that it's something that will start to click in. And when we look at the actual ETH chart, I think that we were looking at this last time, but I cleaned it up so it's a little bit more just kind of clear. And this would be how I'd how I'd gauge how ETH is going to be doing for the next few months here. We pushed up again off of this really big drop, the 1400 and the tariff woes earlier this year, big push up, just similar to what we're looking at with gold. You have some small pullbacks along the way, but ultimately it's just a straight line up towards the all-time high. You then pull back to the 382. So again, if you were looking for a deeper retracement like that 618, the gold pocket, at least for now, we're holding above it. And a lot of times you'll seek out that continuation from there. So we're sitting on that really big level. I think we discussed 3,300 was the big buy zone I would consider back on the last video. I think we went to 34 on the drop, which wasn't the way I drew it up. So to be fair, I thought we'd go higher first before we dropped like that. But anyways, we're holding this level. As long as we're above 3,600, I think we're consolidating here for Ethereum. And the push up and the timing I'm getting off of this, by the way, is just by measuring out this last impulse. Again, utilizing some FIB times. It's not perfect, not overly married to it. But this is what we could see here, these target areas coming in around this time frame. So within like the next 90 days. And it does go up to 7,000, but I wouldn't overlook the 5,600, which would be a great move, new all-time highs out of ETH. And in that time frame, it would be under the idea that Bitcoin's actually remaining range bound within that $120,000. So
let's jump over to Avalanche, because this is one that I think a lot of people follow on our channel. And has Avalanche underperformed on this cycle so far? This is Emin talking about the fact that they were up during this Amazon issue. And if you kind of compare this, there's the operational status of everyone during the AWS cloud outage, which is Solana, Avalanche, ETH, all stayed moderately to high resilience. What about AVAX right now? Is it underperformed, or are you expecting anything from it?
So I think that Avalanche, there's many things. I feel like, it's that a lot of the altcoins have just been so range bound. And one thing that I always like to point out, we when we hop on we hop on these collaborations together, Paul, a lot of times it depends on what's going on, the timing of things, because sometimes you'll hit me with what would I buy today, right? And just a few weeks ago, we were trading with Avalanche up here at $27, and it was already up, 67% of the time. We had that liquidation event that came down, and you could look across, and some, while many didn't see it coming, it's just one of those things I feel like we have to always be prepared for. This is about the third one, by the way, we've seen in the last year and a half. March of last year, I think that February of this year, and then just a couple weeks back now, where you have those big liquidation events in the altcoins. But for Avalanche, we had this one level down here that I'd marked out, and essentially we left it for this whole time. And by no means was it something that you could guarantee we get to. But it's an area if you're looking for those stink bids, or if something ever crashed, or if you're looking to deploy capital into something that's already up 60%, you've always got to be aware that we could always come down to these lower areas. So it's always a good idea. I'm just kind of rambling here on the little investing strategy, but if you ever come into something that's already up, even if we have more upside to go, you can always keep a little bit on the side for those big pullbacks, those big red days, which is what I always tend to do. But to answer the question on has Avalanche underperformed, I mean, it definitely has in the case of looking at others in the realm of like, okay, XRP is up 500% versus this or whatever. But overall, the whole market, I think, looks pretty much like this, right? We've pretty much had a nice Bitcoin run. The altcoins as a whole are pretty range bound at the moment, and can see a sizable move if we get going here. It just depends on getting out of here. So we're back in the range yet again. And just, I still foresee a really decent break for Avalanche and a move back to some of these key levels. It's littered with targets above it. And again, Avalanche is not something that's just a run-of-the-mill altcoin. This is something that has real use case, utility. It has an actual product that's online, and as you stated, is staying online against the AWS issues. So I think it's just something that, again, is just in an accumulation zone, and just got to be patient with it.
Okay, a couple other things I want to get on before we get out of here is one, of course, Robinhood just listed BNB. So we saw a pretty significant downturn on BNB in general after they flipped XRP in terms of market cap, though XRP now has clawed its way back within striking distance again. If you were looking at BNB, is this a buy right now, or would you pass on this one?
Personally, it's a pass on to me, just because I don't love, if I'm deploying brand new capital today, I don't love to chase something that's basically breaking out into new all-time highs. The only thing about that is a lot of times that is what gains the momentum, though, right? You know, you could argue the same thing against gold and Bitcoin recently, where if you didn't buy it at the breakout just because it was the highest thing on the market that day, you know, you still lost out on that move. So it just, again, comes into your own personal, investing outlook there. But for me, this is coming in the big targets. We got the cool down. And the only thing about BNB that I will say is that last, altcoin rally, essentially, so January of 2021, right before we had the 2021, huge bull run, it was the first mover, if I recall. I could be wrong, so don't overly quote that, but I am pretty sure this was one of the first movers, and it went from like $7 to like 70 really quickly, and then of course it ran up to 700. And the reason I remember that is because I remember looking at it at 7 and being like, wow, I missed a 100x opportunity if I didn't just go all in on that point. But it was a really big mover there as a starting mover. So to see this again, basically being one of the biggest breakouts of an all-time high. We had XRP push up recently, but it's already back below that all-time high. This is the true blue break that I can think of, at least, or at least one of them, of the big majors that has broken the all-time high and remained above. And in the previous, session, that's what initiated that last altcoin run. So it's interesting. I think it does have some more upside ahead of it, but it probably wouldn't be my first choice just because of where it's already at.
Listen, we're talking about trying to rotate into defensive positions. Some people are kind of going into that. Let me play a clip for you, and then I want to get your opinion on whether you would hold altcoins right now or try to position out. Take a look.
Do you have concerns about overconcentration? If you really look at some of the big AI companies, it's about a third of the market, like the Mag 7. Is that concentration concerning, as we still have a lot of their earnings coming up, including Tesla after the bell?
Absolutely. And one of the things we do agree is that the market is expensive, particularly when you look at those top companies. And so a little rotation, taking some of the money off the top, putting it into the more defensives is probably a good bet at this point.
So your word of the day is actually defense.
Yes.
So you're saying you want to be defensive, but how do you get defensive? Is it gold, which just had a big pullback yesterday? Is it bonds? I was actually talking to a very notable investor. They believe that bonds are relatively cheap and that it's a short-term trade, actually. You buy the bonds now and they expect the par value to go up quite a bit as we continue to see more economic uncertainty. Which way should you play defense?
So for me, I'm talking defense just within the equities world. I do agree on the fixed income side, but for here, I'm talking about shifting out of some of the more expensive high flyers, your Mag 7, and looking for healthcare, telecom, specifically, to really get a little more oomph as we go into this earnings season and into 2026.
All right, so my question here, Paul, is how do you play defense with crypto? If you're looking at the current market as this is right now, we've got ETH and Bitcoin retracing. What are the defensive positions in terms of tokens during these markets? Staking, go the ETF route if you want exposure, top 10 staying there, or just piling into Bitcoin and ETH?
The contrarian side of me at the moment, just because of how beaten down the sentiment is on altcoins and the fact that I think everybody is just really, really afraid, not even just giving up on them, but afraid of them at this point, and for good measure. Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like, you asked if I would hold altcoins, and my portfolio is heavily based within Bitcoin, but it's more so Ethereum as far as the altcoin route would go. I'm probably in the altcoin world like 90% ETH. And then I have 10% that I do allocate towards other altcoins that, can they go to zero? That's just the risk we all take, but it's just the allocation that I feel comfortable with. And when I look at altcoins, and I guess to back it up before we get into the chart here, but the defensive outlook, right? It's like, there's nothing that's, I guess, not to confuse defensive with safe for some of these alts, because obviously these are things that we can't really control 100%. I would always, immediately I'd state things such as, Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, even XRP, Cardano. While some of those ones have been around for so long, and that's kind of to me the more defensive plays that they've survived already. Multiple down pulls. Granted, the percentage that they're going to go down is still there. So to protect yourself against that, I feel like Bitcoin is always going to be the main hedge, because whatever, Bitcoin's definitely going to follow the least of the rest of the market. But if you have to be in your altcoins, if you're looking for those, then yeah, I feel like the safe bet is the top 10 or 20. But when I look at the altcoin market here, Paul, I'm going to be honest with you. There was something I pointed out a few months back, and it was, I joke about it because it was one of those things, it was before it was cool, which was this cup and handle. All right. And everybody's pretty familiar with that, where you get the nice rounded shape and you get the handle here, and then you look for that breakout, and everybody gets really excited, usually at the breakout. I'd identified this area when we came back down. This was, again, the tariff lows. So that's when I got the majority of, my pickups for this year at least. And then just looking for the next size was to get that above that level here. But one thing that happens at these almost every time, that initial push up, is that it always is a fake out. And what we had right here at the high was, and again, for anybody looking, I'm looking at the total 2 market. So this is everything in the market except for Bitcoin, to kind of help to identify which way the altcoins as a whole could go here. And things like BNB and ETH pushing up 20 and 30% by all means does drag this up alone. But overall, I'd say that if we're holding above this 1.33 trillion for the altcoins, I still see a world where the altcoins could see a decent move up. Now, it might not be them all, but yeah, it's just, to me, this doesn't look that bad. And what we had here too at the end here was a harmonic setup. So again, one of those just Fibonacci just perfectly, where we had this old Fibonacci sequence right here. You come up and you fake everybody out at the high, and then right to the target areas here. So as long as we're holding above here, Paul, I think that we are still in a good shape for the overall altcoin market to continue up. And again, not to just go on the boat of like saying, 2026 and it's a super cycle or anything like that. It's just looking at the information at hand here. That's just where we're steamrolling into. And for me, with the 20-year cycle that I've been basically on about for a long time, right, that completion zone of all markets that I've kind of targeted comes right in line with the end of next year, aka the beginning of 2027. Is really big for me. So I really think that we have the opportunity here to just, if people can be patient and kind of see how things shake out here, that the market actually may surprise us going into the next few months.
Well, we're looking at current market cap at 3.6 trillion. You've got fear and greed holding at 29 right now. So to your point earlier, definitely much lower. And then altcoin season way low on the chart again at 27.
Yeah.
So to your point there, interesting times, guys. We have, in reality, I mean, there's still so much bullish news, but at the same time, there's so many headwinds coming from the macro side. I feel like it negates that. And unfortunately, negative news, you almost need double the positive news to kind of offset negative news, because people, I think, in general are pessimistic by nature.
I agree.
Instead of positive, and are trying to look at this on a bigger picture. Hey, listen, it's always fun having you on the show. We'll definitely have you back. Thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Have a good one.
All right, see ya. You guys jump in on our Diamond Circle. That's where we do an additional email out to you guys. It kind of gives you a framework of what I'm looking at in the markets. I do it every week to you. It's called the Barron Market Edge. You can join that just by clicking the link down below. Catch me out there on TikTok @official Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.